Let's just get down to the shit. Cave is one of my most favorite game companies ever, and they specialize in a very specific type of game. Over the years, they've pretty much become the de facto company for arcade vertical shooters. You can always count me in to pick up whatever new game or new version of a previous game they ever release in the future. Their games are just so fucking good. What makes them so good? Check this out.
Now, are you ready?
It started with the release of Cave's first shooter, DoDonPachi, which translated means Bee Leader in 1995. I didn't stumble upon this game until a few years later, and while writing this review, I've tried to remember how I found it, but to no avail. Like others at the time and since then, I've only played this game in MAME, since it's only been ported to the original PS1 and Sega Saturn. I remember thinking the first time I played it, what the hell is this? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I did played shooters before, but for some reason this game struck a certain note. I don't know if it was the graphics, the sounds, the challenge, and at this point, who really gives a fuck? It's a Cave game! First things first, DoDonPachi. Released by Atlas in 1995, it was the second game to be released on Cave's first generation arcade hardware. It was the first game Cave ever developed, and was the beginning of one of the longest, most notable, one of the greatest game series in the arcade shoot-'em-up genre. As I've stated before, I don't remember how I came upon DoDonPachi, but it doesn't really matter at this point. I didn't start using MAME until around the late 90s, mainly because that's when we finally got the internet at home. It was dial-up, but it still gave you access. The storyline, once you read up on it, is one of the darkest plots in any shooter. A storyline that describes you, as the pilot, sent on an 8-year-long training mission, at the end of which, if you're successful, you gain entry into the elite squadron known as the DoDonPachi Squadron. The twist in this game, as well as its sequels, is that the, quote, enemy ships you're fighting against and destroying are actually your comrades. Yes, in order to produce the best pilots in the world, your training involves you killing your fellow soldiers, thus maximizing your skills. Kinda creepy if you ask me. Anyways, let's get to the game. You have the choice between 3 fighters, Type A, which I call Red, Type B, called Green, and lastly Type C, or Blue ship. The only difference in these ships, at least in this game, is the shot pattern type. In later sequels there would be other differences in the ships, but that's for another review. I usually like playing with Type A, mainly because I prefer a more forward, concentrated firing pattern. Just like any other cave shooter, button A fires your normal shot, button B drops a bomb, holding the fire button concentrates your firepower into a large laser. You also have a super laser attack done by holding down button A and then detonating a bomb. Pretty simple. The scoring mechanic found in old DoDonPachi games also originates here. The dreaded chaining system. I'm just fucking with you. It isn't dreaded at all. Although it is quite challenging without a decent amount of practice. Basically, you have a small gauge in the upper left side of the screen. As you kill an enemy, it fills the gauge and slowly depletes. The point of this is to kill enemies in succession or chain them together. As your chain rises, so does the score multiplier associated with it. In order to get maximum score, you basically have to learn to chain the entire game. The first DoDonPachi doesn't really have all the bells and whistles as do the later games in terms of mechanics that will help you keep the chain going. The gauge drops to nothing and your score is screwed. You take too long to kill the next enemy, your score is screwed. You get killed by any of the hundreds of bullets on screen at any time, your score is screwed. There are also a few power-ups, including shot power-ups and extra bombs. Lastly, the hidden golden bees make their first appearance here, and much like the later games, can only be exposed by lasering their positions. The bosses for the most part aren't that much of a challenge, as the difficulty and bullet patterns would be ramped up tremendously in the sequel DoDonPachi. This game also features the infamous warning message before each boss fight that might be a little hard to read, but it says, "This is not a simulation. Get ready to destroy the enemy. Target for the weak points of the fucking machine. Do your best you have ever done." The graphics for the most part look great for the time. Explosions, bullets, and enemies are nicely detailed. Unfortunately, the audio side of things doesn't fare as well. I'm sorry, I know it was Cave's first horse out of the gate, but let's be honest, the sound in this game sucks. It sounds very hollow, very tinny, and just generally sounds very cheap. The lasering sound is almost like nails on a chalkboard. The audio is one of the main reasons I don't replay the game as much as its direct sequel. Oh, and you also have the stupid announcer guy who says dumb shit like,
"First stop, enemy outpost. Let's see what you got." Okay, good luck. Wing leader to base, commencing operation. Looky what we got here, a multi-assault tank. Watch yourself, kid.
If you survive the last boss without dying, the game begins again, in what is referred to as the second loop. In this second loop, everything is the same except the enemy bullet patterns have increased in difficulty. If you make it all the way to the end of the second loop, you face off against the true last boss, Hachi. The killer mechanical bee is where the game and the game series in general gets its name from. Hachi will definitely test your dodging skills and is designed to take out even the best of players. After you destroy him, you get a congratulatory message from your commander and the game ends. Overall, it was a great start to the series. Not one of my favorites, but still fun to play from time to time. 2 years later, Cave decided to trump itself on every level possible. DoDonPachi was designed specifically by Cave to increase the amount of on-screen bullets by 50%. Let me repeat that. The game was designed around doubling the amount of bullets. To be honest, I actually played DoDonPachi before I played the original DonPachi, and maybe this lends to why I don't really like the first game that much. DoDonPachi is pretty much the game that put Cave on the map, and is highly regarded, even 16 years after its release, as one of Cave's greatest games of all time. More bullets, more lasers, more enemies, bigger bosses, better music, better sound effects. Higher scores, just more everything. This game also marks the first time of the now infamous English warning at the boot-up screen. Violators will be prosecuted to the full extent of the jam. Released in 1997, DoDonPachi is what a shooter is all about. Tight controls, huge bosses, a kick-ass soundtrack, and the return of chaining. Yes, the chaining mechanic introduced in the first game is back, and pretty much works in the same fashion. By killing enemies in rapid succession, your score multiplier goes up. Take too long between kills and the chain resets. Once again, knowing the enemy patterns is essential, as well as knowing when to jump back and forth between lasering and normal firing. The super laser also returns, but is now nearly 3 times the size as it was in DonPachi, plus makes a really cool mechanical sort of heart-beating sound.
Holy shit.
It's awesome. Anyways, you make it through 5 stages, destroying everything in sight. If you met certain requirements, much like the first game, you begin the game's second loop. Yet another 5 stages of hell, and you face off against Hibachi, the dreaded killer mechanical bee. After you whoop him, you're given the ending to the story in this game. Much like the first game, you're fighting against your comrades again, but this time, your comrades were actually trying to stop you, since they found out the commander of the DonPachi Corps is pretty much off his rocker, went batshit nuts, and decided that humanity was flawed and needed to be wiped out. Overall, DoDonPachi is just a masterpiece in the shoot 'em up genre. There's literally nothing wrong with this game. Nothing. I've been playing it for nearly 15 years now, and it never gets boring. I've never tried for a total score attack clear, but maybe someday I'll sit down and try to go for it. In the meantime, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and go check this game out. You won't regret it.